You're listening to a Pop House Network podcast for developers by developers.
Welcome to OffHeap episode 77. Hey everyone, it's getting the cold weather temperatures, but it's a good day because I think Norwin is back on the menu at the Roundhouse, right?
Yes, it is. And there's no snow here in Illinois.
Oh gosh, yeah. So of all the ironies, Seattle.
Freddie, yeah. How's the weather that you moved there for?
Seattle.
How's that doing?
I am trapped on my house. I am in a hill and there's not enough plows to plow it all off. So I'm stuck for the next week. I'm living on peanuts and leftover beer, but it's okay.
Got about a bottle of tequila in there somewhere you're working on.
Yeah. Oh yes. That's a Thursday one. So yeah. But for those who don't know, I'm Freddie Gima. I'm one of the principal engineers at Expedia, author, speaker, jChampion, and Seattle Java user group co-organizer. And I'm here with my usual suspects who happen to be at the bar where it all started.
Yep. Bob Pollen, independent consultant from Chicago, Apache Software Foundation member, committer, Java champion, and CJUG board chair.
Josh Juno, application developer, author, speaker, Java champion, and NetBeans PMC.
Michael Manella, senior director responsible for open source Spring development, author, speaker, Java champion, curmudgeon at large.
And yes, we always keep our curmudgeon just close by for all these episodes. And before we dive in, I wanted to thank our sponsors. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring and analytics platform that integrates with over 450 technologies, including AWS services, Docker, and Kubernetes. Datadog's platform brings together metrics, traces, and logs in one place so you can get full visibility into your environment and improve your application performance. With machine learning-based alerts, customizable dashboards, and distributed tracing, Datadog makes it easy to unify disparate data sources so you can troubleshoot faster. Start your free Datadog trial today. Listeners of this podcast will receive a free t-shirt once you install the agent and create one dashboard. Visit javaoffheap.com/Datadog to get started. And again, that URL is javaoffheap.com/Datadog. We thank them for being sponsors for the show and keep the Northwind beers flowing and the mics on and recording. So thank them, give them a shot. It's very, very impressive technology we use, and it scales just with whatever load you have. So no issues. If you ever try to own your own Graphite or Grafana server, that could be a nightmare. They make it super easy. So we thank them for being sponsors of the podcast. And now let's go on with the show. All right.
Let's do it.
So I guess the first section is conferences. All right. And I think this one is you, Josh.
A lot of stuff coming up, man.
Okay, So coming up quick, like next week, if we get this out there, you'll hear it. It's the JakartaOne LiveStream, December 6th. If you listen to this after it's already happened, it's all on YouTube. You can go ahead and take a look at the sessions there. Everything is online. And there's going to be some great sessions on Jakarta, microprofile specifically, and lots of great speakers. So you should come out and take a look at this.
And that one's virtual only, correct?
Virtual only.
Okay.
Put on by the Eclipse Foundation. I want to say this is the third or fourth year. Third year? I don't know.
Okay.
One of those. It's not the first year, but I think it's going to be continuing for the time being, for years to come. So it's a good one.
Great.
All right. Next one is Mike.
So SpringOne. So a little bit of a change from when we recorded last time. SpringOne has the in-person conference has been pushed off, and so we're going to do a virtual event at the end of January. So we're looking at January 24th to the 26th. It's going to be a slimmed down, very action-packed schedule. Not a lot of tracks or anything like that. It's just going to be 3 hours a day for for 3 days, but get all the highlights essentially. So highly recommend checking that out. Spring.io or SpringOne.io is where you can register. It is free, so check it out.
All right. And the next one is jChampions. Who put this one? I think that was you, Josh, right?
jChampions Conference. This will be the third year of the jChampions Conference. This is all Java champions speaking at this conference. It's all virtual, spans over 4 different days. And again, all these sessions are recorded. We definitely recommend you go and register for the conference so we can see how many people are interested in watching real time, and you get a great opportunity to chat live with Java champions and have great discussion. Lots of great sessions at this conference as well. We just went through the CFP and we chose, it was a really hard choice, but we've got all the selections made. The website is up and running now. Go take a look. This thing runs from January 19th, 20th, and then the 23rd and 24th. So go and sign up.
Josh, the Jakarta live stream or the jChampions Conf, are you speaking to either one of those?
I am not speaking at either of those. No.
Not worth going anymore. That was it. That's
trying to throw him a bone, man. I'm trying to.
I appreciate you. I will definitely be there for both, but I'm hoping to moderate some sessions for the jChampions conference.
Yeah, and that's Ken Fogel, right? OmniProf. So I think he's the one who organizes it, right? For the jChampions. Ken
Fogel's definitely organizing it. He's doing a great job. And we've got some of the same people on the CFP and the committee this year, but a couple of new faces as well, all Java champions. So, and we should throw one out there to Mary. Mary Bregliski is going to be having a talk on the jChampions conference. So I'm not sure what day it is yet, but check it out.
Jug Zone.
Yep.
All right. And the next one, Bob, go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So Devnexus, April 4th through the 6th. The call for presentations is closed. So if you missed that, you can always try the back channel, but for the most part, it's you missed your window. But the conference, one we're at quite frequently. Hopefully we'll be there again. We'll see. But we'll wait to see what they decide on that. Other than JakartaOne, probably one of the best Java conferences in North America. As far as content.
They have it in Atlanta. Not a hard ask to just get there. And like we said, we still love the in-person. And if you're comfortable with in-person conferences, great conference to be in. So.
Yeah, no, of all of them, so JakartaOne, SpringOne, those are all remote and virtual. Devnexus in person.
I think you have to try and make it. If you're wanting to network with individuals, you should try and make it to at least one in-person conference per year. That's my personal goal. It'd be great if I could make it to more. I'd love to, but from what I've heard, I've not been to Devnexus yet, but it would be a one to cap.
We got to get you there, Josh. Seriously.
I know, right? It's like
bang for the buck. It's hard to argue.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
Yep.
And then I guess the next one is the JakartaOne recap.
Well, that's got to be you, Freddie, because you're the one that went. Josh, did you go too?
Yeah, I was there.
All right, so we got two.
I have video of him singing karaoke. So
right.
I will sell this for money, or beers. I'm cheap.
We're looking for new sponsors, and the prize for the highest bidder is the releasing of videos. Actually, I believe we've got videos of both of you, don't we?
We do.
You're not absolved of this either.
It's easy to imagine myself.
The problem is,
he has an amazing voice.
On the other hand, that's an exclusive.
Yes. I'm a flusy. You see video of me everywhere.
Kind of experience. It was fun. It was fun.
But yeah, no. So it was interesting. I think that for being how it was organized, we know usually JavaOne has a long ramp up, right? Like they announce it almost like at the end of the previous JavaOne, they announce the next JavaOne. And this one was a little bit on being on the air for the longest time. We were not sure how much attendance was going to be, but to be fair, it definitely didn't look full like other JavaOnes do, but it didn't look empty either. So it was, it looked like there was a decent crowd. I got to see faces that I usually just get to see in JavaOne. A lot of the Oracle folks were there in having a strong showing, of course. But I got to see some of Brian Vermeer showed up. There were I guess there was Dr. Deprecator make his appearance on his wearing his suit, and we're talking about the new JS stars that are coming out. So all in all, it was like everything else. We were not the main event. Open World was the main event. They had us in the Caesars forums, while I think the main conference proper was on the Venetian. But all in all, it wasn't bad. I mean, I did enjoy myself. I don't know about you, Josh. What do you have to say about it?
I'm gonna say one of my favorite parts was watching the No Pointers play again. That was Pointers actually played a couple of times, and they did a great job. It was awesome.
Yeah,
good to see the crew together there.
Yeah,
and, go ahead.
I was gonna say my wife laughs at that because it's like you played in Vegas when there's people just dying to have 1/5, and you have compared to them, you have no talent.
Oculus check.
You played Elvis plays, right?
Played Vegas.
That's awesome.
It's awesome.
But I'll have to say, we did the survey, and survey, and I gave it a 5 for the Caesars Forum. I love that place. It was nice. I thought it was a really nice venue. I did give some feedback, but what I missed from San Francisco were the tents, the street tents, because I really liked going outside and sitting in the tent, in between sessions, and then you could have the band out there playing, and it didn't interfere with any of the sessions going on inside. And I think that next year, if they were to put a tent outside where they had that outdoor area, that would be perfect.
That's the Caesars pool. Just go by the pool.
Yeah, cool. but that was the only recommendation I had. Other than that, I thought everything was great. The attendance, it didn't seem like it was too far down, but it definitely was not what you're used to seeing at, when we were in San Francisco at Moscone. But it was still pretty full keynote, and all the sessions that I saw were really good. It was great to network, and the JCP party was great. It was just good to see everybody.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing. I agree with you, Josh. The thing that I did miss was in JavaOne, there was usually the big outfits. Red Hat will throw a party. Spring will throw a party, or the usual suspects will throw a party, and these were they rented spaces and you kind of mingle. I think what happened this year is there were not that many of these big events. It was more of we're going for dinner, which is nice, but it's not the same. You don't mingle the same way when you're sitting down eating something that when you are in a rented out room and just shuffling around.
Open for just rubbing shoulders with people. I mean, that was the first experience we had, Freddie, when we were just rubbing shoulders. It's just awestruck. It's oh my God, they're people we've just heard of.
I know. Josh Block is over there.
He's over there. He's speaking different languages to many different people.
And just think, now everyone's like, Freddie Gimmy's right there. He's right there.
It's like avoid. But no. So it was one of those things that as a conference organizer, you always thinking about those things, but I did not realize how much of an impact it has. Dinner versus rented out venue event and stuff like that. But yeah. So I think essentially for what it was excellent. It's definitely not, I wouldn't say the same level as other like, San Francisco, but I think the potential is huge. The upside is huge. They keep doing it, it's going to be, the best one ever yet for the next one. So
I think if they do it I know they're going to do it at Vegas again next year for sure. It's already in the calendar, but I think if they continue it there and we get the attendance that we used to have, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And plus they have to, like you said, they have to feel it out a little bit more and get a couple of more after party events or after that, they have to get a couple of other events like the JCP party going, because there was a night or two where it was like, wasn't much else going on. So I walked around. It wasn't like I was bored. There's plenty to do in Vegas, but you kind of have to wonder where everybody's at and stuff. And it seemed like they had more get-togethers in San Francisco. So I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the value of going to conferences. Again, being able to rub shoulders with the people that are building the technology that you're using, have those hallway conversations. I mean, that's if you're going to conferences, those are the things you need to be focusing on as a developer, trying to grow your career, trying to grow your network. The more organizers can do to facilitate that, the better it is for everybody, the attendees, the speakers. And it's muscle memory. Got to get back into it after a long break from COVID. And it's good to see the stuff coming back, but challenging economy coming up, challenging, environments. So we'll see what makes it next year. I mean, it's encouraging to hear that they've scheduled another one in Vegas again. I wasn't able to make it this year just because ApacheCon was so close. Maybe next year will be different. I look forward to going to another Java one.
So next year, just so you know, it's in September. So it's like a month earlier next year.
Awesome.
But
yes.
The only thing I worry about is jChampions.
Yeah.
Because that's in September.
Yeah.
So I hope that they schedule those. I know that, of course, the organizers are going to talk and they'll schedule them out accordingly, but I hope they're not like one week after the other.
Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, that makes things tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, Java 1 has always been a near and dear to my heart. So good to see it coming back again and look forward to it being available next year.
Yeah. And hats off to the team at Oracle who put it together. They did a great job. They're really listening to the feedback that they're getting and trying to implement it. They really are all ears and they want to make it the best it can be again. So let's see.
Heart to all of them. So
yeah.
All right. Let's go to news. I think the
first one's you, Josh.
So
Podman.
I just wanted to mention that there's now a desktop application for using Podman. And so usually when people install Docker, they pretty much right away start using Docker Desktop and they got the GUI and everything.
Licenses
now. You gotta use licenses.
Yes.
You want to use Docker Desktop. And so, I kind of got into Podman and, it was all command line. So I'm used to it. CLI is fine and it works really well. It's almost exactly like Docker. They're pretty much the same. But now they've got Podman Desktop and I've only played with it a little bit so far, made a couple of containers, images, but it's pretty nice. And it's definitely worth taking a look at if you use Podman or if you're interested in using something other than Docker for containerization. So I definitely recommend it. It's a Red Hat product, so it's a good one.
Still Apache open source, not...
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's open source, but I'm not 100% certain on what the license is or anything. So I'll take a look at that real quick. But the interface is really nice for Podman Desktop and real easy to manage your container, just like Docker. So if you're coming from Docker, it's pretty easy to get into Podman. Like I said, all of the commands are the same. And again, no cost to use it. It's pretty slick.
Right. The next one I think is you, Bob.
Well, I mean, it's
all
the news of the day. So I mean, I think if you've been tracking the news recently, it's not something we take a lot of pride in, but I know we talked about it a little bit last episode, is just the more challenging market conditions for developers, for anybody in technology. We've gotten to the point where there's been some significant layoffs from different, bellwethers of technology globally. So, I mean, just to kind of go down the list, I mean, some of these have received more media than others, but you've got Amazon that it laid off about 10,000 workers. You've got Meta that laid off about 11,000 workers. And then, Twitter, not quite as high in numbers, but, is significant because of the percentages at about 3,700 workers. So, I mean, the tighter labor market is coming. It's here now. So we're starting to see companies kind of downsize and eliminate certain positions. The interesting thing that I guess is not released in that data is how much of it is engineering versus recruiting versus corporate versus, all the different functions that a lot of these larger companies have. But you got to believe that when you're talking about those numbers, that you're just being an engineer, you're not going to escape this, right? It's you have to realize you're in that new economy. You have to realize that in a world where you have to prove a little bit more of what value you're adding. You may not be doing nightly code reviews with Elon, but maybe you're delivering on your sprint work, delivering on the features that you've committed to, like, the real things that delivering matters in these economies, is from my perspective as a consultant, of what keeps people billing or keeps people employed during the tough times.
One thing we should call out. So we just threw out three big numbers, right? 10,000 for Amazon, 11,000 for Meta, Twitter, 3,700.
Yep.
So, but big numbers by themselves, everything's relative, right? And so like Twitter, that 3,700 people is about 50% of their workforce.
Yeah.
Amazon, total employees for Amazon is 1.4 million employees.
Ooh.
So 10,000, again, big number. Is it,
Fraction of a percent.
Exactly. Yeah. Meta, I'm actually looking it up right now. Give me a sec.
Meta's a couple 100,000, I believe. So I mean, even with Meta, you're still talking about
Meta 71,000. There's 72,000. So
okay. Significant in that case.
That one is significant percentage wise. But yeah, like even though Amazon had nearly 3 times the layoff number that Twitter did, to your point about engineers not escaping, there's a chance Amazon, like you could cut 10,000 people at Amazon
and not cut a single engineer.
Exactly. With warehouse and it could be warehouse employees. It could be delivery people, all kinds of other functions. Twitter, though, I guarantee that there's a whole lot of engineers.
I guarantee there's a whole lot of
engineers. Yeah. So one thing I wonder about is how many of these people are leaving because of changes in the environment, like no more remote work.
Well, these are layoffs again. So these are non-discretionary departures.
Compulsory then.
You're forced out.
But if you go to like the Elon stuff, is what I guess I'm getting at is he said you're basically coming into the office. And how many people said
no, thank you.
That's separate. That's separate from this 3,700.
Okay.
That's separate. Yeah. I don't know that I've seen a concrete number for, to your point, like, so Elon sent out an email basically with a questionnaire in it saying you've got to come back to the office or have a nice day. And there was essentially a link in that email that you were required to acknowledge within 24 hours of receiving it. I haven't heard a concrete number for
no, thank you.
Happened with that. Like, what percentage, accepted that offer or not? I haven't heard any concrete numbers. I don't know that they would share them either.
Neither did I.
Yeah, but and the other thing I'll say is to add to what Bob and Michael are saying is that the one thing I was reading about is that the big ones, the big companies are either slowing down, freezing, or downsizing. But there are now, it seems like the medium and smaller outfits are actually more eager because they can access talent that it was essentially prohibited before. So if you are happen to be in the market for whatever reason, don't just look at the big ones. Just broaden your horizon, because they're very good. Just smaller outfits, they're just not that big. That still are looking for talent. So it could be an opportunity to experience the other side,
That's true. It's not all doom and gloom. There are still places that are hiring. I mean, it's actually, if you are hiring, it is a good time to be picking up talent, because there are going to be quality folks available. But that's not everybody's case, right? So, we're reporting on it because it's happening, right or wrong, it's happening. And, I think one thing I've learned after a long career in tech is it's not necessarily something to take personally. You could be doing a great job and still be impacted by these things. It's just a matter of making sure you're marketable and you're ready for it if it does happen. That's really the only advice I can give, is that, even very, very talented, smart people can be impacted by these things. So you just have to be ready.
Yep.
Up to date with what's going on in technology. We don't want to get stuck in using the same, code base for 10 years and not ever looking anywhere else. It's like we talked a couple of episodes back, going out and doing some open source work or whatever. It's just good to keep up on technology.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep. And the next news that we have is, I guess, the Software Resiliency Act. That's you, Mike, right?
Yep. So this is me. So in the EU, they are proposing, and they're having conversations about a law called the Cyber Resiliency Act. And what this essentially is it's a law that the goal of it is to identify software that is critical to infrastructure, critical to the economy and so forth, and put certain criteria around it, around things like, vulnerabilities and whatnot, like actually require certification that you're clean, essentially. And where this becomes interesting is the analogy that the article that we'll link to compares it to is what's the in the EU, it's or in the UL in the US it's called
Oxley.
Well, no. So in the US, there's something called the UL, or Underwriters Laboratory. So if you buy an electronic of any kind, they've basically blessed that it's safely built. Like it's not going to put your house down when you plug it into a socket. There's something similar. It's called CE for the EU. Like you'll see the when you see UL on the tag, there's usually CE next to it. Yep, it's for that.
For both.
They're essentially proposing an analogous arrangements for software, so that if you write software, you have to get it certified that it meets certain criteria. Yep. Now, there are 3 levels of criteria. One is performing a self-assessment. So you fill out a form, you're good. Second one is a product examination by an auditor. So this would be like a code review or something by a third party. And then there's a third one where you would actually it's a more rigorous evaluation, essentially. Now, where things get interesting is if you are in open source, they try to make exemptions in this for open source projects.
Okay. Yep.
So that they don't have to spend lots of money and go through an expensive process.
Right.
Where things get interesting, though, is their definition of pure open source versus a product of some kind. There's a lot of projects out in the open source world where that's a wishy-washy line by their definitions. Is there a commercial company that may offer support? Is there a company that may offer a commercial version of said open source project?
A lot of times, yes.
Exactly. Right? And so because of that, it now doesn't qualify for the simpler version of certification. Mm-hmm. And you have to then pony up for the much more expensive option. And so there's concerns that this will impact open source in a way that could be detrimental to certain projects in certain situations.
It could be, I guess. So I'm just reacting to it because it's the,
Yep.
kind of the first time I've heard of the difference between like, hey, a company where maybe there's a company that is backing that open source versus something that is maybe almost like an open source utility, where it's like a shared thing. So like Log4j, for example, just to name a popular Apache project, doesn't really have a commercial company behind it. Right. It is used in a lot of commercial products, but there's no company behind it. I'm assuming that would probably qualify for the more pure open source license.
So
not quite.
So,
okay.
But wait, is there? So I'm going to read this from an article. But wait, isn't there an exception for open source? Yes, but with a very big asterisk. Quoting CRA Recital 10, which is the section. In order not to hamper innovation or research, free and open source software developed or supplied outside the course of commercial activity should not be governed by this regulation. Well, then you have to evaluate what is commercial activity.
True, I guess. Yeah. What is outside of it? So, I mean, Log4j, for example, is a project through the Apache Software Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, which would not be commercial. But if it's used in commercial software, does that then qualify it? That's, I guess, the question that you're posing, right? So, but because I mean, from somebody that works in open source foundations, and also, nobody has accounted for reporting requirements around security vulnerabilities and things like that. Like ASF is starting to get into that. Like, so we have hired a full-time resource that now deals with CVEs and delivering CVEs to projects.
Cool.
So I mean, that is a paid position at the ASF now, but that is like new this year. Like we're just getting into that where it's like, okay, we need somebody that is going to be active on this all the time because the rest of the ASF is mostly, I mean, it's almost all volunteers. So having volunteers manage that stuff, it's hit or miss. It's, do I have time this week? Right.
Yeah. And what's also interesting is, and I haven't been able to figure this out yet, is in the open source world, there is a lot of, you're working on the project, you're going to offer support for it.
Yes. Yeah.
And how does that work? Because like you don't have release rights for it.
Nope.
But
the guy working on it does though.
So there's those nuances that there's concerns that this won't. We all know legislation is it's tough to get right.
Sure.
And so this is still in the conversation phases, but like these are some of the things that are being brought up. And I personally believe that this is just the tip of an iceberg that we're going to see a whole lot more of. You know, in the shadow of the solar winds, in those types of attacks, like there's going to be more scrutiny around open source and requiring some way of level of guarantees or assurances that like by consuming your software, I'm not screwed. Basically,
no, I mean there is that, and me as an ASF member and VP of fundraising, I will say that, this is something that I think we need to make sure that we're supporting our open source foundations on, initiatives that are trying to secure open source projects through Apache, through Eclipse. Like it is going, if the governments are going to require evidence and documentation and testing, and they put that on the onus of the projects need your support in order to make sure that they stay viable. If it's, hey, I've got a company behind it, there's several Apache projects that have significant influence from commercial offerings. Like it is good to have somebody that has a commercial offering that is also going and requiring them, because they're making money off of it, to put some skin in the game to say, hey, this is safe. Like that makes sense. But there are a lot of projects through these foundations that are utility projects that don't generate money, but yet are still super important.
Apache Commons, things like that.
Commons, Log4j, like those of JUnit. Yeah. JUnit, I mean, again, has its own, it's outside of Apache, but like has its own sort of funding. And like, those are the projects that are going to need some attention. And honestly, like the funding issue on reporting requirements like this, like no volunteer developer is going to want to volunteer to do reporting. Like that's not, it's not fun. It's not cool. It's not a good resume builder, to be honest. It's tough to make that it's tough to make that pitch that you're going to get a volunteer to do that.
Well, so the self-reporting thing, yeah, I think that's an easy, it's a bar that most companies are willing to, or even the self-certification one, most like average Joe working on an open source project is willing to fill out a form kind of thing. It's where you have to now engage an auditor, a third party, there's fees involved, there's contracts, there's complexities that the average engineer is just like, nope, I'm out.
I don't care.
And you don't want the same people writing the code doing the audit anyway. I mean, you actually want some outside. I mean, it's just like how you do a code review. You don't review your own code. You have somebody that hasn't seen your code take a look at it as an outside observer. And, if they don't work for your company, you have to pay them for their time to do that. Like that is a money thing.
Yep.
So like, it is not bad that we are making these requirements of these projects, but if we're going to make these requirements of these projects, we need to fund or find a way to support these projects so that they can make sure that they can engage these people and get these certifications, because there's a lot of people getting these projects for nothing.
Even that would be an interesting thing though, because I'm just going to pull a project out of thin air here. So like no bias, but like Kafka.
Yeah, sure.
So Apache Kafka, there's the open source project.
Yep.
And then there's the commercial entity behind it.
Right.
Now, if the commercial project was required to submit the audit, like if the commercial company behind them was the dominant contributor, then you would assume they would be the ones that pony up the money to do the audit, but that's not a guarantee, right? Like you wouldn't. I mean, somebody's got to step up and say, I'm willing to pay for this.
Yeah, I mean, so it comes back to your definition. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're an open source project that has a company behind it. Okay, there's a lot of folks in the ASF that can kind of point to those projects that have that situation. But what is how do you guarantee to say, all right, legally,
right?
And you're on the hook.
You're on the hook. Exactly. Yep.
Because the ASF is probably not going to do that. Yeah. Like that's not our place.
And the ASF actually, just the more I think about this, is probably the least complicated option. When you get into like the Linux Foundation and the Linux kernel, when you get into Kubernetes and the CNCF, now you're talking about projects with millions of lines of code that have been contributed by every Fortune 500 company under the sun, kind of thing. Who's going to be the one that's going to pony up the money to
how to govern the foundations and going to direct for there's some things that need to be thought out.
Is the foundation going to pay for it? Yeah, because we're all contributing money to participate in this working group anyways. Like there's lots of complexities to be
of things to be hammered out. So it's a good idea.
It's something that we need to. Well, we're going to keep a tab on it. It might not go anywhere because I think it's early, right? Like they're still
yes, it's still very much in the conversation.
Yeah, but if it becomes an issue, just as when we follow O versus G back on episode 1, we'll keep reporting on it.
That seems so long ago. Oracle versus Google, I assume.
77 episodes again. Not that anybody's counting.
It was that was episode 1.
Start with.
That did get settled eventually, though. So hopefully
it did get settled.
Think about 60 episodes, something like that. 50 episodes.
Sounds about right.
Not so long ago. All right. The next one I think is Mike as well, right?
It is. So I want you to take a step back, close your eyes if you're using GitHub Actions, and I want you to imagine the workflow you've defined. And I want you to think of any action you're pulling in from another GitHub repository. And if that repository was moved, A, would you know about it? B, are you sure you're okay with that? And I bring this up because there is a GitHub bug that has some questionable. It's been questionably addressed by GitHub, and so the GitHub Actions, if you are pulling in an action, you reference the let's say a tag, for example, in the URL. So the URL, you point to a tag in another repository. That repository gets renamed, so it gets moved. GitHub automatically adds in the redirect, so your workflow still works. When it goes to grab the code, it does the redirect, everything's great. Now evil hacker come in, and I create the exact same repository name as your old name. GitHub will just remove the redirect. And now you'll go straight to me instead of where you were going before.
Oh, God.
If you're using a tag or anything that's not basically anything other than the SHA URL, you will go, I can reproduce that URL in my repository and feed you my whatever I want. And so this is something that's been identified and reported to GitHub. And they've said two things. Number one, the secure way to address this is to make sure that if you are using a URL, use the one with the SHA reference in the URL, because that shouldn't be able to be, I shouldn't be able to reproduce that as a hacker as a hash in my new repository. That's the whole point of GitHub or Git. So like that makes sense. The controversial part here though is a lot of people view this as this is a problem that GitHub could fix. Like they could just like address this in some other way. The way they've chosen to address it is they are now not doing redirects or not enabling somebody to squat in the old spot if it has more than 100 forks, 100 or more forks. That is the threshold for saving that. So feels like a really wishy-washy, like
it's like if you're quote unquote, I guess it's a popularity.
Yes,
thing?
yes, 100%. Yes, it's if you're popular enough, we'll protect you. If not, you're screwed.
It's
Problem
really
forks don't necessarily relate to usage.
Yeah.
Well, that was the other part. Can I just make 100 forks? Like, I know what's going to be
your time.
Nobody said anything. Well, I just
so actually, one of the things that in conversations I've had about GitHub since then, the opposite has been a way that we've also talked about securing yourself, which is fork it into an org that you would control, and point your URL to that. Now, granted, if you want to stay up with the other repository, that doesn't stop like all those other, like you still need to maintain, like if you're doing, pulls from the other repo and to stay up to date and all that, like it doesn't protect you from that, but it's interesting nonetheless. The short answer is use that. If you're doing GitHub Actions, use the SHA hash in your workflows. Period. End of story.
Is it like almost like it feels like instead of rename, like it's almost like don't rename. Like if you have a code base, don't rename it. Just
but it happens from time to time. Like for example, a project that gets donated to the ASF, right? So you might have a repository that's at a university. It comes into the ASF as an incubator project, and the university GitHub redirects to the incubator project. I mean, this is not an uncommon scenario. And at incubator level, you could be below 100 forks. I mean, that's reasonable. So I mean,
like I'm trying to think like sometimes
the one caveat is it's got to be the full one. So like you'd have to have access to the org that it was in before too.
So if it's like a big okay.
So there is that.
So if I'm at the University of Berkeley,
yep,
and Berkeley has a code base called XYZ,
yep,
and then I create incubator, which is under the Apache organization, Apache XYZ hyphen incubator.
Yep.
I may redirect from Berkeley to Apache XYZ incubator. But you're saying if I don't use the SHA hash on my GitHub Actions that I'm pulling that in from, I could end up, and somebody at Berkeley creates a new project.
That's the thing, is somebody would have to have access to the Berkeley org to do it.
True.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So it's again, it's a measured thing, but it's definitely like if it happens, it's kind of a big deal.
You almost need like an evil actor within the org that wants to squat on that.
Or somebody, you've got the going down the route of the Apache stuff. Instead of I came from Big Berkeley to Apache. I came from somebody's basement
to Apache,
Apache,
which happens from time to time as well.
Exactly,
right?
and that's probably the more dangerous option. Because then I'll just punt. I created an org. I punted on the whole org because now I'm sending it all to you.
Yeah.
I can reclaim the org too. Like if I had, foo org with XYZ project, that was mine.
Yeah.
It was the only project in there. I'm donating to Apache. Apache accepts it. It's all, so XYZ goes to Apache. Foo I don't need anymore. So now I could, as an attacker, I could claim the foo org.
Because it's essentially, do you delete it from GitHub?
No, this is specifically the attack vector, specifically when you rename.
Wow.
Because GitHub just does a redirect. And so it enables you to somebody else to grab it. And if somebody else does grab it, all they do is they drop the redirect. There's no notification to anybody on the consuming side that where you're going isn't what you think.
Yeah, the way I've seen or the things that I run into before has been where when a project move is that the GitHub will have like the last thing they do, they keep both repos, but one of them will say like we moved and there's no updates, go here if you want to get the latest. And that is more cumbersome, but safer also, because then you're forcing, like if I was using my GitHub Actions to build on this thing, then now I need to update them I need to go to the new repo instead of it being transparently done behind the scenes. Seems okay. And I, to be honest, I only run into this for the smaller projects, but
100%. Yeah. Like this is the one place that I'm familiar with this attack actually happening. Somebody wrote an action that they talked about on a blog. And the blog, it just happened to do something useful. People used it. It got moved to somewhere a little more prominent, and a squad, and even the people weren't actually attacked, but a researcher proved that it could happen. Kind of.
Right. All right. So I guess for that news is just be careful with your GitHub Actions. See if you can SHA them. That's the better way to protect them. And if you happen to moving a repo, just know that this is something that could happen. So the other news, I think this is you discovered this, or you
I didn't discover it.
You didn't discover. You didn't discover.
It came through Twitter. So I mean, so for me,
so, I mean, it's true, right?
Yeah, it's got to be true. So Fred Brooks, the writer of the Mythical Man Month book, has died. So it's computer science being one of those newer things. Like it's actually crazy because most of our kind of luminaries are still alive, but some of them are going away. So, but Fred Brooks again is probably one of the more quotable of the authors. I mean, so a couple of things that I use at my clients all the time from Mythical Man Month is, adding manpower to a late software project just makes it later. Like that is a truism that he wrote well before I ever had to experience that on a project. And every time it has come up, whether people have listened to me or not, it has been proven true. The bearing of a child takes 9 months, no matter how many women you assign to it. I mean, again, software analogy. You can throw as many developers as you want at the project. It's going to get done when it gets done. Just lost a luminary in the field. Definitely recommend anybody out there that hasn't read the Mythical Man Month that is involved in software. It is one of the kind of core literatures to read just to kind of understand things and how to guide projects. And probably last but not least, a quote of his: "A good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment." I can certainly attest to that in my career.
100%. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Guilty as charged.
Yes, sir.
Once you have that outage, then you will remember forever. No, and for those who don't know, like, because we keep trying throwing the Mythical Man Month, And what that was, it was a unit of time, I guess it was, for how long a project was taking, right? And that's sort of like, and it's like, oh, how many man-months is this task going to take? Oh, it's going to take, 30 man-months. And then, oh, that means that if we throw 30 developers, it'll be done in a month, right? So that's kind of like where Brooks starts like teasing at, like, look, there is like a developer needs to get aware. The worst part is when you hire them all at the same time and there's really no prior knowledge of this. Like where they all have to try to come up with conventions and trying to just organize themselves. But the idea is that there is a point where there's a breaking point where if you keep adding more resources to a project, it's not going to be done faster. It's actually going to be done slower because now you have to coordinate. So yeah, go read his book. Is one of like the seminal works for our field. And yeah, like so we're very privileged that we still have like the field is so young that we actually have almost all, not all, but like we have a lot of knowledge that is so recent.
A lot of it, yeah.
Yeah. So go read his book if you haven't. All right, and then for our discussion topic, this is something that we're kind of like talking a little bit before we dive in our recording. We'll talk like at least for 15 minutes before they kick you out.
We've got 30 till they kick us out. So Freddie.
Yeah, no, but it is an interesting topic because I think it goes many which ways, which is, there was the new release cadence of Java has been a great blessing to begin with, right? Like we actually get to try things faster. Yeah. Oh, that's coming.
Oh, it's here. Luma's here.
It's available in preview. It's available in preview. But it's coming in GA. Like it's
yes.
Yeah.
The next LTS.
They're shooting for the next. I don't know if they've actually announced it.
They have not.
Yeah,
you're right.
Everybody's assuming.
Everyone is assuming.
No pressure, Brian.
No pressure. But the thing is so after this rapid cadence, now we don't wait a lot for new features. There are new features coming out on every JDK release. And there's with the open source proliferation, you're not tied to even Oracle schedules. Some others like you can even get a Suo support for the non-LTS releases. There's actually more comfort on going every which way. So the question now becomes, like if you have a new project, where do you baseline? And that was kind of like an interesting question that Michael was throwing around. And I have a certain almost like a little like flow chart where we go to. I'll go last, but I posed the question that Michael did. Maybe starting with Bob, like if you have a new project.
Let Michael.
I'll say, can I start? Because
oh, he wants to start.
I'll provide the context. I'll provide the context. So, Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 just came out. So Spring Boot 3 came out literally last week from our recording. It's GA now. Definitely check it out. That's actually something we should add in the news. The baseline for it is Java 17. And we announced this back in fall of last year. So just over a year ago when we announced. I think we announced it in September of last year. And at the time, the reaction was overall positive from developers, but there was definitely the sentiment from certain members of the community that you're going to require Java 17. Are you nuts? Was part of it was definitely a reaction that we did get, and from certain parties. And when we went through the evaluation of what are we going to do, what and why, getting off baselining on Java 8 just flat out didn't make any sense. Like it's time to move on from Java 8. There's enough interesting features post Java 8 that made sense. So then you start looking at LTS. So then you got 11 and 17. So we looked at the support agreements or the support arrangements, and 11 is significantly shorter than 17. And so the thinking there was at a minimum, if we're going to require people a year from when we announced it to upgrade their baseline, let's set them up for the future. Let's set them up for the longest that we can. Fast forward to now, and one of the things that we've been talking about is not only the baseline, but how everything in our ecosystem is moving faster. So Java comes out every 6 months. Spring Boot comes out every 6 months. Like if you look across the ecosystem, like Graal, is coming out. I forget what the cadence is, but they're also dropping versions of Java like hotcakes as well. Like you have to be up to date. That cycle is getting faster and faster of new software coming out. And it feels like Java 8 is kind of the last of the old way of doing things where we used to joke around, right? People were stuck on Java 6 forever, right? Like that was a thing. People have been stuck on Java 8 forever. That was a thing. Like it almost feels like the pressure is building up to a point where that is never going to be the case again. You cannot be that way going forward. And so that's why I asked the question before the recording was, like, obviously I've got my biases based on from where the chair I sit in. I'm curious that, from everybody else that's actually writing software in anger, that's deploying it to production and whatnot, like, how are you viewing this problem?
What's funny is we take our cues a lot from you.
There's mistake number one.
That could be a mistake, but there's a reality behind that, which is the ecosystem that is making the decisions on the primary frameworks. There is an assumption from downstream, client programs, customer programs, that the amount of testing, the amount of focus is on the runtime that you are suggesting as the one that's behind the release. Mm-hmm. So from my vantage point as somebody that usually adopts those frameworks, it is in my personal interest to stick to those guidelines as well. My latest project that I built out, it was an earlier version of Spring. It was not Spring 3, but we went with Java 17 because the anticipation of moving to that for our live date or very soon afterwards, and just getting a better understanding and build out of it. Because I think there is a bar between going from 8 to 11.
Yes.
I mean, it's the same way as from 6 to above 6. Yep. Like there is a certain amount of work that you have to do. Mm-hmm. So
once you get over that, like once you got to
once you get there, though,
it's a lot easier.
Very easy.
Yeah.
So like looking back, because I can do that now, retroactively, I recommended very few customers on the Java 11 release, even though that was an LTS. Mm-hmm. Java 17 has gotten the bulk of my recommendations for new projects. But if it was before 17, I still lean towards 8, just because of the support and kind of the comfort with that release. So it seems like 8 to 17 has been the jump for me personally on my projects. But now that I'm starting on 17, going from 17 to the next LTS, which is like 19 or 21, I don't feel like there's going to be as much friction there.
So with that in mind, will you eagerly upgrade or will you wait for something to push you to it?
To be totally transparent, the biggest bet that I am making is on Loom as far as performance on multi-threaded customers. So I have not gone down the reactive route with any of them. Mm-hmm. It is MVC on a Spring level, where it is thread-based, and it is under the assumption that we are going to figure out Loom in the next few years, whereas several of the customers that I'm expecting to grow, the threading model is going to be figured out by them.
So will you wait? So will Loom be the driver for your next upgrade, or will you just automate? What I'm getting at is, Java is one piece of the puzzle.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I'm seeing, and again, this is why I'm asking, is Java isn't the only piece. So you've got Java, you've got Spring, you've got all these other pieces that are constantly giving, the fire hose, upgrade.
Yep.
And every time we ask our community to do an upgrade, I realize we're asking for a cost.
Yes.
There is a cost involved in every one of those upgrades.
Yes.
And so I guess to flip this a bit, how do we get to a point where the community views upgrades as something they will proactively apply when they come out, as opposed to reactively grab when they have to?
We don't.
And
We are still waiting on the people that are delivering those frameworks. Again, I think from the community standpoint, consumer standpoint.
Okay, for the framework. So
yeah.
What prevents you from going from Spring Boot 3.0 to 3.1 to 3.2, like grabbing every one of those as they come out, as opposed to
backwards compatibility? So if all I'm doing is changing the POM file, the Gradle build file, I'm going to do it. If it's, I also have to change code because I tried to compile and it broke in several places.
Understood.
That is now a cost. But if I change that number in an XML file or a .gradle file and it just works, the developer perspective of that is that one was almost free.
Do you do it proactively though, or do you wait for
I would. So, I mean, to me, the recommended runtime means something, because if you're saying this is the one we're using for all of our testing and I use the same one, to me, there is a free amount of testing that I inherit by adopting the runtime that you're also using. Even though it may work on an old one, there are certain things I probably don't even have to think about if I'm using the same one you are.
That makes sense.
So from me, I'm taking my cues from the community and from the folks that are doing most of the testing on a specific runtime, regardless of whether there are features that I want. Now, I've already mentioned I've kind of put a little bit of a bet on Loom for some of the features. So there are cases where features in the runtime might also drive that decision. But if you're asking me, take all that stuff away where maybe I don't care about the features, what are the other things that would cause me to upgrade? It is security concerns and it is stability concerns. Running the same runtime that the community is using for most of the development is a stability concern thing, because if I match you, I expect more stability or more consistency because it's been through the ringer on other tests.
If you're derivate, you know what I mean? Going off course, if you will, from what we are prescribing.
Right.
There'll be dragons.
It is a stability assurance thing, versus, again, security is another aspect of it. With the LTSs, we are being told that Oracle and other partners in the JVM ecosystem are patching security issues. So there is an aspect of that to it as well. But
now, that goes directly to the question of proactive versus reactive upgrades, though, because we talk about the stick versus the carrot, right? It's hard to make a carrot that everybody gets excited about. Yeah, it's easy to make a stick that everybody is willing to run from. It's just there's a vulnerability. Everybody's going to freak out and upgrade, right?
Knock on wood. It's December.
Let's do that all over again. What was that? Log for Jade?
A year ago. T-shirts still available, I'm assuming.
That's
we're going to do the anniversary edition.
But how do we get to a point as an industry where you don't need the stick anymore. Like it's just, you're just automatically doing it.
The way I see it
is it like automation? Like what?
I think I personally think containerization is a good step forward towards that, because in the environment where I come from and where I think a lot of people are at, if you're in an enterprise environment, the server has a version of Java installed on it.
Sure.
And that's the version where you're staying in. And it takes a lot of work to change that version, because you're impacting a lot of people, a lot of users. You have downtime. You have a lot of planning that you have to do in order to update your versions on the servers. If you're
using a VM,
you're
doing it on directly on a VM.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you're using a container, then
You literally just upgrade your base
impacting
image.
that app,
Yeah, you
that
upgrade your base image.
instance,
And that's
that
it.
instance.
exactly. So if we get more off of using a VM onto different containers on a VM, then you have the option to go to whatever Java you'd like to go to.
Yeah, and that's
A good step forward, I think.
like
I've heard that in theory, but I've also heard that, and again, like I'm not the person in enterprise, writing this stuff in anger, but I've actually asked this, and from what I've heard, while in theory, slap whatever JVM you want in a container sounds good, that's not the actual practice. And Freddie and Bob, I'm looking to you two with regards to this. Like, is that actually happening, or is this still?
No, I mean, so
thou shall use blessed version of Java at company X.
You look at, I mean, so Freddie, you'll appreciate this, is the Giltenny mystery meat topic on the JDK list, right? So I mean, like, you can't just pick anything, right? Just because it's in a container doesn't mean it's safe.
Right.
You really want to use certified containers where it's JVM versions that have passed TCK, that have had some level of rigor around it in the release process. Like, just running a container doesn't solve that, but you can build on containers that have gone through that process, and that gives you a benefit as a developer to say, hey, I'm using an LTS at the latest version that is past the TCK. Those are the types of criteria that gives you that warm and fuzzy feeling that, okay, I'm running on something that I feel is going to behave consistently.
Yeah, I mean, just because I love, to use the latest, and I want to go ahead and make use of the new things that are in Java, that doesn't mean I'm going to jump off an LTS. I still think it's important, even though you have containerization. If you're going to production with something, probably a good idea to stay on something that is LTS.
Yes.
You don't want to jump onto something in between. While you could, you could definitely swap it out easy enough. You don't want to start building some application that depends upon something that is in that newer version of Java that's not an LTS.
Right. I mean, the only rationale, I guess, so I like that the non-LTS releases exist.
Oh yeah.
But like, I'll give an example of where I might use a non-LTS release. So let's say the Loom preview features are out and I want to run a performance test enabling Loom, where let's say Tomcat has adopted it, where I'm going to be able to use those virtual threads in a Tomcat application server. I'm going to run a performance test against it.
You can see if it just works.
I can just see if it just works, right? But
performance.
releasing it to production, there's a certain level of trust where non-LTS releases, it's like, well, I have to ask the question, is the performance gain that I measured worth the risk of going with a non-LTS release, knowing that, hey, breaking changes could come out in the next one, or, this release is not going to get that security patch that the older release is actually going to get because it is LTS. I have to worry about those things.
And I think that is actually the trade-off. Like the one thing I was going to add for the containerization, because that actually makes it very easy, especially for like cloud providers will give you their cloud-friendly version of their Java version, right? Like so it's super easy to, like, if you're using AWS, you can get Corretto top of the line, and that is an Amazon blessed kind of like build for the JKK, same way with Azure. And you know, so if you happen to be working on some cloud provider, chances are you have access to a good Docker image. For the LTS versus non-LTS, I think like you said, Bob, is super easy just to like update a container and see if it runs. Like it's
so that specific. That's actually where I was going to ask my next question. Is anybody at this table exploring automation around that? So a JVM, a new version of the JVM comes out, automatic. So not getting a developer to change a number in a POM, but actually having a build process, pick it up, try it out. If it passes,
I mean,
push it.
I mean, so you can
play with fire.
Docker versions, right? So you can cite a Docker version that uses a very specific release, or you can say, hey, stay on the latest of this version. So there's a way to do it. Now,
I know there's mechanisms. The question I'm asking,
am I using them? No, I am still very much on. I want to stay with a specific version. I will upgrade when I say so.
I tell you when I'm ready.
But I guess my point is the capacity exists.
What holds you back?
Oh, I'll tell you what holds me back.
Please, please, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
No, it's fresh in my memory because I have to roll back a 17 upgrade.
Here we go.
There we go.
Oh gosh. So Zookeeper plus what was it? Ignite.
Yeah.
So
Apache Ignite,
right? So
in memory.
It's a memory data compute grid in memory cache. We had one project that was like we had an Ignite deployment that was running on 11, and there were Ignite clients that we decided to break to 17. Lo and behold, what happened there is that we did not realize, because it was kind of like a little bit obscure, that the version of Ignite that we were running was only for 11, and there was technically no support for 17, but that doesn't stop you from running it. So one of the issues that happened is that there was a big threat lockup on just negotiating like the discovery of Zookeeper with that node that essentially locked the grid. So that was, and the worst part is that it did not happen if it happened at the first 10 minutes, great. Then you know what happened, just roll back. This happened like 20 hours in. So no, like when you go in, it's like, what was screwed up? And you don't know, because essentially the JVM is DOA. And you're like, what happened? So that lesson told me like that will be a reason why I like.
But that was a major version upgrade. That's not going from 17.1 to 17.2.
And that's more like what I'm. More like what I'm asking.
Yes, right.
Things that should be seamless. What's preventing you from automating them?
Okay, fair enough.
So Java 17 to 17.0.1, or Spring Boot 3.0 to 3.0.1, or insert a library here. Like, what prevents you from automating?
I'm not a Node.js developer. That's why I don't do ranges.
Gradle has the support.
Maven has the support too. I mean, it's you can do it. You can do it in Docker. You can do it in Maven. You can do it in Node.js. I mean, the ranges functionality is universal.
And so why the reactive approach instead of the proactive?
I think some of it is making sure that I know when the stuff is going in. So if I were to do it, it's a build time action, right? So
why couldn't you just schedule the build time to every Friday?
Because that I don't do it that way. I do it on commits. Developer commits, I'm going to release it. Dude, I release a lot.
So but you can also, like, every Monday have a job that checks for upgrades, right?
Yeah, but then I have to code it. Then I can't just use the range. The range would just be like, okay, it's available. It's coming in. I don't know that that's what happened, but it would just happen. Well, right?
That's what I'm getting at. Is like, how do I, what prevent? So you said you want to know what
prevents me, because I want to, So it is a variable that I guess probably due to actually probably more major release breaking changes I've kept in place.
And that's fair.
But
I'm talking
have I actually been burned by a patch release? Freddie, I can't say I've ever been burned by a patch release of Java. Have you?
No, and I think that's where I go. Like, it almost feels that if it depends on who is the minor update. Like, if it's Java OpenJDK, actually I'm fine, super fine. Like, I'll be fine automating it on the Docker container for a major log in the major version, update the minor versions.
So you're gonna do it, right? You're gonna do it, right? Like, I want to next version of OffHeap
commitment.
Yeah. Next version of OffHeap, man. I want to hear that it's done. Like, let's.
Let me.
I'm
figuring out the Docker images that we are using. There is a latest tag, but the latest tag just goes to the latest of that. I need to figure out if it's possible. I'll report back, and if you see me looking for a new job,
come talk to me.
But no, it depends. I guess for me is like, if I trust the person that is doing the minor updates, like for example, I noticed like Gradle breaks.
So Java is actually an interesting one though, because most enterprises I'm aware of have Java support through somebody. Now, whether it be Oracle, whether it be Azure, whether it be your cloud provider, whether it be VMware through Spring Runtime. Like, most enterprises have Java support somewhere. So going back to I trust whoever I'm getting my Java from, you're paying for it. Right? You're literally paying somebody.
I don't think that many people are paying.
I think we'd be surprised.
Well, it's hard to say.
I cannot confirm or deny what we do. But let's say that I took a very long look when Oracle changed its licensing rate. So
I mean,
from my perspective, the hardest part about doing something like an automation is if you're not on a container, you can't do this.
Completely.
It does make it tough.
It makes it.
I completely forgot.
I won't say you can't, but I will say it makes it technically to a point where it's a different conversation.
You're talking about coordinating
Yeah,
different teams.
it's a different. Technically a different conversation. If you're.
Yeah, it is.
I agree with that.
Oh,
That's not. I don't think that's the use case I'm talking.
Okay.
So the one thing I was going to throw out there too, just I just started using, because it's available in our repos, this thing called Renovate Bot and Renovate. So what it does is essentially it installs a GitHub action that allows you to go through your dependencies. It creates a PR with like, oh, there's a new version of this, there's a new version of that, and you can configure it so it's not all the versions. It's like you can say like, I just want 5 dependencies upgrades every PR, so that kind of like, not quite a carrot, but it makes it, again, it's lowering those barriers of like, you can see it, you see the pull request coming in and you're like, oh, okay, like Jackson version 3.5.3 is out, and then you're like, okay, let's try it out, and then just merge it. So that's what we use, or what I'm planning to use for doing a little bit of that carrot. All right. So I guess the conclusion is we use LTS when we can. We explore. If you have the ability to use containers, you can play with containers for newer versions. But still,
I haven't heard an excuse of why you can't automate patch upgrades for Java.
and also
for Java, the JVM,
JDK. Let's start there.
yeah.
If you're containerizing your apps, I have not heard anybody at this table say give a solid reason why they can't automate.
I've not said no, other than just being nervous and having stupid reasons.
No, it's a chore. I think it's a chore on our infrastructure, but it's probably something.
Troll.
Yeah, there's a troll in our bridges. But yeah, so
I'm a JVM person. I press the button to upgrade the JVM.
And it comes with goodies, so we should upgrade. But yeah, so always engage with us if you have other different opinions. Our Twitter handle @OffHeap is open. But yeah, so I guess that's before they actually kick you out. I think that's as far as we can go in today. Love to hear if you have any other opinions. Throw it on Twitter. Well, it runs. So or drop us a line if you want to give your own feedback to it. And with that, we're done with this episode of OffHeap. This is Freddie signing off.
Bob signing off.
Josh signing off.
Michael signing off. If you're on Twitter, as Freddie mentioned, be sure to follow us at OffHeap. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.
All right. Another